Month number 5 of 2025 has passed us by. That means we are 1 month away from the halfway point of 2025. This year, like every year, is flying by way too fast. But that means it's time to stop and rank all 15 new May movies that I saw, from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what is your ranking of the May movies that you saw, and if I missed something that you think I would like, be sure to let me know about it. One real quick announcement. Today, I will be at Fan Expo. Actually, tonight and tomorrow, I will be at Fan Expo Dallas. So if you watch this early enough, get in your car, stop watching my video, go meet me at Fan Expo Dallas. The information is down below in the description. Even if you're on the other side of the planet, if you get on a plane now, you can fly over and you can make it just in time to meet me as I'm leaving tomorrow. And let's get started. In last, another simple favor. I saw this at its world premiere at South by Southwest a couple months back in the month of March. Was pretty excited to see it because I liked the first movie. My wife is really into the first movie. I was really hoping I'd be able to work some magic and be able to bring my wife to the world premiere. Unfortunately, that was not able to happen. Saw the film and wow, what a disappointment. It just in no way lived up to the original. And it's kind of a classic bad sequel situation where the original film had a real specific kind of hook and path to it, of a very normal, relatable woman in the suburbs with a YouTube channel becomes infatuated with this glamorous neighbor of hers and then finds herself wrapped up in this murder mystery and gets, pulled into her favorite genre. So there's a thing about it that really anchors it that's relatable as we get swept into the fantasy side to it and all of the over-the-top stuff. With this movie, all the anchors are removed, and from the beginning, we're just off in fantasy world, where our highly relatable character, Anna Kendrick, is now a famous author that's, because of the events of the previous movie, herself is a bit of a celebrity. And then we're off to Europe for a mob wedding at a glamorous exotic location. So we're pulled away from the suburbs, anything relatable at all to do kind of the lifestyle porn of all of this, the celebration of the glamorous life. And sure, are there movie stars given charismatic performances? Are there some jokes that made me laugh? Sure. But everything is just so much more contrived. It's so much over the top, more over the top. There's a Blake Lively sequence in a bed that it's the sort of thing that they went, oh, wouldn't it be funny if? And they never stop to think about what's really going on in the sequence. And they play something for laughs that's that's not actually funny. You're just trying to get away with it because of the gag in the middle of a really not joke kind of context. So just a classic example of a sequel that tries to go bigger without ever remembering what made the original work. Next up, Sister Midnight. This is a film that I saw at Fantastic Fest last year. And I hate to kind of pick on movies like this that are smaller films that you catch at a film festival, that smaller budget, little distribution. So I don't get any joy being negative. I don't really want to dunk on it. Just simply put, it's just not a movie that really worked for me. It's about a lady woman that kind of gets married through I believe an Indian kind of arranged marriage, and she doesn't really like her husband. And then it's also a bit of a story of there's a vampire side to it as well. And the metaphor didn't work for me. The humor didn't really work for me, and perhaps maybe for cultural reasons, I just didn't connect with whatever it was going for. And it seemed like a lot of people at the festival got a lot more out of it than I did. This is just a movie that didn't really work for me. 13, Bring Her Back. This is the latest film from the directors of Talk to Me. They are also YouTubers turned filmmakers, which is pretty cool. Went into this film rooting for them because they are YouTubers like myself, but they've turned into filmmakers. That's awesome. The movie, for the first 80% of it, I liked it more than Talk to Me, their previous film. And if I was ranking it based off the first 80% of the movie, we would go up 5, 6, 7 slots on this list. Like, we would be like much higher up on this list. Because for me, I connected with the characters more than I did in Talk to Me. The intrigue of the situation, both of like what's kind of going on with the supernatural side, as well as the woman that these kids are living with, and then the kids themselves, their dynamic. I was just invested more in all of it. There's solid body horror, creepy moments. But this is an example of a movie that goes somewhere in the last 20 minutes that for me just like chopped the legs off the whole movie and made me go, oh, well, I guess I didn't like that after all. And just it's that sort of thing that I was just so invested in what it was doing. And then when they went, no, we're not doing that, that's done. And they didn't have something better planned for the last 20 minutes. And not wanting to get into spoilers too much, but you're tracking along with a character that has volition, so making choices is driving the plot forward. And the way things are resolved in the last 20 minutes, none of that stuff really matters. It's inconsequential to the final outcome in a way that really soured me on the movie. And it made the movie much nastier than it would have maybe been otherwise, in a way. Like, we're watching a horror movie that has all sorts of gross stuff in it, but nasty in the wrong way. It's just like a cynical, like, ugh. I'm not really interested in watching that ever again. 12, Karate Kid Legends. This was one of my most anticipated movies of the year, and it is now destined to be one of my most disappointing films of the year. That I love the Karate Kid franchise. My very first movie webpage was that guy Jackie Chan right there. So much about this, I was like, all right, hopefully we can pull this off. These two on screen together, that'll be awesome. Unfortunately, that's not really what this movie is. The trailer's marketed as basically a Karate Kid remake, except because of the scenario of the story, we need 2 different mentors to guide our new Karate Kid. That's not what the movie is. It checks a bunch of boxes of like mandatory plot beats and images that you have to have in a Karate Kid movie. And then it kind of tells its own story about the karate pizza man who wants to be a boxer. Like, and if you hear that, you go, what are you talking about? Exactly. Like, what is this movie doing? And that's a huge chunk of the runtime for a movie that's only 94 minutes. But we're also trying to do this. This like only comes in the last little 30 minutes of the movie. It all feels kind of tacked on. Like, both Jackie and Daniel feel tacked on. Daniel has no story reason for being in the film. He's just like, wouldn't it be cool if he was in the movie? Here's an excuse to do that. Well, if we do that, we can put him on the poster and we can market it that way. But that's not what the movie is. And so ultimately a very frustrating, disappointing. 11, Absolute Dominion. This is the latest film from Lexi Alexander, the director of Punisher Warzone. I actually was able to interview her about this movie as well as her career in general and talk with her about Punisher Warzone. Love it if you check it out somewhere around here. But the movie itself is basically a combination of tournament fighters. Her and I got to talk about our love for the movie Bloodsport with kind of YA dystopian future stuff like Hunger Games and kind of her interest in religion. And my degrees in Bible, I love Bloodsport, one of my favorite movies, and dystopian stuff, cool, I'm game for it. Blend them all together, and it's almost a movie that was tailor-made for me, but unfortunately it didn't have the budget to pull that off. She originally was supposed to have a much bigger budget, and with the way movie making plays out, it went from like $50 million per movie to under $10 million.
I wanted to write it because I thought nobody's going to greenlight this, so I wanted to write it as a young adult book first. Mind you, I literally went from selling a $150 million 3-picture, big dystopian sci-fi martial arts movie to nothing. And then they said, well, can you make it for like under 10 million? I said, yeah, I can make anything. I mean, at some point you just say stuff because
Yeah.
frankly, while I'm saying that, I had no idea how I would take this huge concept, which was much more sci-fi and, a much bigger world in its original concept than, what I had to make it. So I had no idea how I'm going to shrink it that much. But I thought to myself...
And as you're watching this film, or at least when I was watching the film, I felt like almost every frame of it, I could feel it turning this story into this. From the locations where the tournament happens, the scope of the city that we're in, all of it just feels like taking something very big and just having to kind of like find a way to tell the story as cheap as possible. That's disappointing. There's a number of things in here that were, as a tournament fighter, it kind of showcases some different martial arts, and even with our lead guy has a different style to it. The way that it kind of treats our lead character, who's a secular humanist, with kind of the religious implications of some of the bigger stuff going on is kind of interesting. But even in there, it felt like it was trying to tell too much. She wanted to tell this over 3 movies and cover all this other stuff, and it had to be all put in this movie. So we're rushing through a lot of things. So a movie that I wish we got to see her original version that would have been like $50 million, or 3 movies for $150 million. Bringing us into the top 10, Fountain of Youth. This is the latest Guy Ritchie film. It is a globe-trotting adventure in the style of Indiana Jones or National Treasure, starring John Krasinski and Natalie Portman. All of those ingredients are very much my kind of thing. That it's like, yeah, I love all that stuff. That's a genre I love, a director I love, and 2 actors that I really enjoy. Throw it all together, and unfortunately, you get a pretty boilerplate globetrotting adventure film that plays it too safe. Is it a movie that is like very much my thing by people that I like in front of them behind the camera, therefore it's just watchable for me? Absolutely. Like, I didn't have any problems watching the film, having fun watching John Krasinski do his Indiana Jones. No problem with any of that. That is a totally watchable film. Entertaining, and goes from location to expensive location to exotic location. It's easy to entertain with all of these ingredients, but it just doesn't add anything new to the genre. And it plays it so familiar that you're immediately drawing comparisons. That we go to Egypt and the Great Pyramids, which Raiders of the Lost Ark went to Egypt. And we're the third act, the kind of ultimate climax. What's going on? You can piece this together, but Fountain of Youth, there's a lot of similarities in the third act to the end of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And then kind of the puzzle solving, the flavors of National Treasure. There's stuff about like, flip it over, find the map on the back of it. Straight out of National Treasure type stuff. And so it just felt like it borrowed too heavily from too many things. Where it, like I said, it's entertaining, but there's nothing fresh or new about what they brought to the table. Number 9, The Surfer. This is another one that I watched at South by Southwest. And it's a surrealist metaphor, like for anxiety, for being or being gaslit. It's an odd film where it's all about Nicolas Cage just wants to go surfing at this one beach, but the locals won't let him.
Don't live here, don't surf here.
Hey, Dad.
It's okay.
And then it kind of plays into this just like dream logic, absurdist, surrealist scenario of just kind of crazy things happening to him. And you're like drifting between what you, like something playing out fairly normal and literal. And then it just very seamlessly, all of a sudden, we're in this alternate dream set of logics and things just keep happening. There's certain things about it that are very reminiscent of Beau is Afraid, a movie I really didn't enjoy, but at half the runtime. And thus much more palatable. Like a film that goes somewhere that's outside of my comfort zone and is weird and different, but the size of that is like just enough to be like, I'm glad I played around with that. That was fun to experience. Not really my thing, not one that I'm going to be rewatching a whole bunch, but that was nice to experience. Then we have Fight or Flight. This is a new Josh Hartnett action movie, very much in the vein of Bullet Train from a few years back, except set on a plane. And if you're doing the cheap B-movie version of Bullet Train, it's a pretty enjoyable version of that. That it does some stuff with the camera work because you are in a plane, and so it has to use these wide-angle lenses and stuff, and it's very brutal. So there's a very distinct look to it with the way that it's shot. As it goes along, it gets like crazier, and you know, it would have been a few spots lower on this list, but you move into the third act, and it just goes bananas. It goes so wild where our character's literally drugged out of his mind going into this final fight that's just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs crazy. And he went, okay, that was pretty cool. That's what gave it enough to like inch it up the list of like, yeah, that you earned your spot higher up by going for it at the end. Would have been better if the whole movie could have had a little bit of that flavor to it, but there was also budget restrictions that I'm sure stopped them from being able to do everything they would have. Number 7, Wick is Pain. This is one that kind of came out of nowhere. They released a John Wick documentary, like an official John Wick documentary made by the people that made the John Wick films, where they kind of have been, you know, documenting the creation of these films all along the way. They have these little vlog journals that they recorded back in 2013, making the original film. And the documentary is a history of the careers of the 2 directors of the original John Wick, as well as kind of the history of the creation of the 4 movies and the challenges that went all along the way. And what was cool about it is that it kind of dives into the world of being stuntmen, explains some of the differences between being a stunt coordinator, second unit director, and being a director, and that journey that they were on. As you get into the discussion of the creation of the original John Wick, it kind of explains a lot of how movie financing works, because the movie almost imploded because they lost like $5 million in financing. And they start just kind of discussing all their options to try and fix this. And like, why don't you try and do this? And they're like, well, the reason we can't do this is because we've sold the foreign rights already based on the original script. And so it explains how some of the stuff about foreign rights versus domestic rights, where money comes from, how movies are made, production versus distribution, all in the context of John Wick. All of it with, you know, Keanu Reeves telling the story. And so it's very informative about movie making, like real movie making, the sometimes boring part of filmmaking, but in a context that's interesting because it's John Wick, and where did this story come from? And they go into test screenings and the feedback that they got, and how do you try and market a movie when you don't have a budget, and how sometimes film festivals can save the day. In the case of John Wick, one of them was Fantastic Fest, a film festival I've already referenced in this video at least once because I attend it every year. Unfortunately, I started 3 years too late to have been there for John Wick in its debut, but just really informative. And then it kind of goes throughout the later movies and kind of how it progressed and how it went from 2 directors to 1 director, and kind of some of the tension between the 2 guys. Like, they're still friends and they still work together, but they're a little bit of like, how could you do that to me? But I get it. But also I got it's real informative. It's not like a documentary that has like a deep emotional weight to it that, like, you know, makes you cry like the Superman documentary last year, but like informative in a way that packages it so it's entertaining. There's a lot of really great nuggets in here. Next up, Broke. This is a modern day Western tragedy about a tragedy of sorts about a rodeo rider, the bucking bronco rider that is trying to like figure out his life. And it's kind of doing 2 narratives at once. One of them is kind of a modern day retelling of the London short story To Build a Fire, of someone trying to survive, our lead character trying to survive in the middle of a blizzard with very limited resources, and then him reflecting backwards and kind of telling his story and how he got to that place. and what he's good at, what he's bad at, what he's passionate about, his flaws, and all the ways in which he is broke. It stars Wyatt Russell and Dennis Quaid. And it's just like a solid, independent little Western drama. Just about, reflecting on your life, the choices you make. It's only like 90 minutes long, doesn't overstay its welcome, and it delivers enough, gut-wrenching stuff while not being too dark to, be interesting. Number 5, Clown in a Cornfield. This is another one which I saw at its world premiere at South by Southwest back in March. It's a pretty cool context because I was there hanging out with a lot of horror TikTokers, and they're friends with the guy that wrote the book, Clown in a Cornfield. And so I ended up hanging out with the guy that wrote the book and the guys that wrote the screenplay and stuff. I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. This is kind of a fun way to end up watching a movie. And the film itself, for the first, third of it, 30 minutes or so, fairly straightforward, standard slasher that was like, okay, yeah, I've seen this before. And there's like a very specific moment where you go, okay, that's the movie. Like, why did we need to make this film when we already have other slashers with clowns? There's a moment in this film where you immediately go, that's it. This is going to be fun. And it kind of kicks into high gear and was quite a bit of fun once we kind of got to that moment. It wasn't bad before that. It was fine before that. But it was just, I feel like I've kind of seen this before. And then the freshness starts about a third of the way through the film and it kind of cranks things up. You get some fun kills. And so just a fun clown slasher that it's not trying to reinvent the genre, but it does have for 2/3 of it, a fresh kind of spin on what it's trying to do, some fun kills, enjoyable enough. Bringing enough new to the table. It was like, yeah, that was cool. Number 4, Lilo and Stitch. Said this before, I don't have any nostalgia for the original Lilo and Stitch. I didn't grow up with it. So I'm probably not the best person if you're wanting someone to compare it to the original and faithfulness, I'm not the right person. I watched this as a dad with my 2 daughters, and they brought their friend along. And was it a fun family film? And it was. It's, Hawaiian E.T. It's a type of story with some Men in Black thrown in there. It's the type of story that I think lends itself well to live action. And the humor landed for me. The little girl was cute and charming. So you just kind of get a classic story of a child in need of a friend, finds it in an alien, and you get cuteness, charmingness, some laughs, a bunch of chaos. Why not? And a good heartfelt message by the end of it. I had a bunch of debates on the internet with people like deeply offended by the changes that they made and the new ending. And I was like, maybe just see some of the stuff a little bit different when you interpret it as a parent rather than as a fan of the original. Like, what means family? It means family. What have they done with the end of it? Like, that's a weird interpretation of the. I got into it almost right before I started filming this. Got into it with a guy on TikTok about it. They ruined the end of the group. How dare she turn on her family? Like, turn on her family? What are you talking about? But hey, maybe that's just me. Real quick before I give you my top 3, be sure to join me down below in the comments section. Let me know your ranking of the main new movies that you saw, and if I missed something that you think I would like, let me know about it. Also, remember, still time to jump in your car and drive to Dallas. Still time to steal a plane, fly over to Dallas, and meet me at Fan Expo Dallas this weekend. You can still make it happen. We can still do this. I'd love to meet you. In third, Final Destination Bloodlines. Now, I've seen all the Final Destination movies. I saw the first couple of them many times back in the day, but this wasn't one of my favorite horror franchises that I had deep nostalgia for. Even my wife and one of my best friends, that was one of their movies back in the day that both of them watched the film quite a bit. I don't really have any of those ties. It's just kind of one of those ones that I saw that was like, that's a great premise, but the movies never were super great to me as individual films in and of themselves. So for me, I think this might be the best movie in the franchise, where if I look at it as a whole film, it's the only Final Destination movie where they did anything particularly innovative and different with the central concept. that all of the sequels kind of follow the exact same template. Premonition of accident. Someone discovers death is following them. They try to warn everybody. People don't listen. People start dying. People start listening, and then they all die. It's like so straightforward, just that. And this one kind of takes the concept, and it has all those ingredients, but it plays the idea out over time and on a much bigger scale. And so it's a new angle. It's a clever twist on the same set of rules. I think we're more invested in the characters. The Tony Todd stuff is shockingly poignant, and it feels like a man saying goodbye to his fans. It can be funny. There's some great kills in it. So for me, I kind of think it was the most well-rounded of our Final Destination films. Our runner-up, Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning. This was one of my most anticipated films of the year. I'm a massive fan of this franchise. Couldn't wait to check it out. And while it swings for the fences, I don't think it knocks it out of the park. But getting a double is still a double. And that's what I feel like this movie did. It swung for the fences, and it didn't get it. In that regards, it disappoints. But it still got a double, which is very good. On the positive, when it kicks into gear, when things get going in the back half of the movie, the submarine sequence is awesome. Just a really well-crafted sequence, and an extraordinarily expensive one. And they'd had all the rumors of $25 million submarine oopsie issues that they had. And you watch the sequence, and it's like a rotating set with water in it, and you're like, oh, yeah, I mean, of course that was extraordinarily expensive and difficult to pull off, and I can understand why that had some mechanical problems. And then, of course, Tom Cruise hanging from a plane is awesome. It pulls the franchise together. It ends on an emotionally satisfying way, but it's also a movie with just too much exposition. It's a movie that is setting up so many characters, so many subplots, and moving all these pieces around.
And we pivoted and deconstructed the entire movie, and I built a nonlinear version of this film and shot it to be nonlinear. It was very clear as soon as we assembled it, did not work. So Tom said, just make it linear. I made it linear, did not work.
That it is a very talky first half of the movie. It takes a while before it feels like things like really kick into gear.
We hate exposition, but we don't avoid it. We shoot it and overshoot it and over-inform and over-include, and then are constantly pulling it back.
That's unfortunate. That I wish they could have ironed out some of the kinks, that it was a smoother ride, because I would say it might be the clunkiest Mission Impossible movie, but its positive sides are very positive. But coming in at number 1, Thunderbolts. The MCU has had a bit of a bumpy last 5 years. Since really Endgame, it's been a bit of a bumpy ride. There have absolutely been high points, but the MCU as a whole, the consistency and quality has dropped, and you haven't felt the cohesiveness of the universe. So this was like exactly kind of what I needed. A movie that is very mainline MCU story centric, that's really good, and it feels like it's pulling things together. Like I feel like I know where we're going and why we're going there, in the grander MCU conflicts that are at hand. It's a movie that, while it is very much an important piece of the MCU, it's also feels just like a movie that is about something. It's overtly about mental health and purpose and depression, and it leans into that. It explores that. It's a very character-based MCU film while still having plenty of quips and action and cool set pieces. And even kind of on some of that, it's a movie that has all the things you're supposed to have in an MCU film, but they brought in outside influences as well. So the third act gets very surrealist and pulls in like very odd things that you wouldn't normally see in a movie like this, and done practically.
There's a lot of grounded stuff in this movie and a lot of grounded action. There is a whole surrealist side to the film, and I think that traditionally in this world you might lean pretty hard on visual effects to do that.
So, an MCU film that doesn't over-rely on CGI, that has stunt work, that has practical sense, that's about something, that feels cohesive, Yeah, all of that sounds like a big win and what I feel like I've been missing from the MCU for a long time, and I got it with this film, so it comes in at number 1. Be sure to share your ranking down below and drive out, fly out, portal out to Fan Expo at Dallas this weekend so I can meet you and keep talking movies and TV too much.